Speedbird 851, turn right, heading 180. Order 14 Papa, turn right 245, report localizer established.
Hey everyone, welcome back to DJ's Aviation. 3 weeks ago, a Lion Air 737 MAX plummeted into the sea, killing all on board. Since that day, it's been non-stop with stories about the cause of the crash, who's to blame, the perception on the industry, how flying now apparently isn't safe, and so many more questions. Rather than making a video for every single small detail, I wanted to wait to create a bigger than usual video discussing everything that has been happening since and overall the impact that this 737 MAX crash has had on the aviation industry. I'll be leaving timestamps in the pinned comment like always, should you want to focus your attention on one particular story over another. However, if you do choose to stay for all of it, that is of course more than appreciated. The best place to begin though is the crash to get an overall recap and a bit more information on what occurred. The aircraft PK-LQP was a Boeing 737 MAX 8 and departed Jakarta on the 29th of October 2018 at around 6 AM local time. The flight only lasted 13 minutes. This was when the aircraft crashed. The startling nature of the crash was not only that all people had passed and the aircraft had ultimately gone down, but this plane was actually some 2 months old. It's quite uncommon for brand new aircraft like this to go down. Usually you'll see an odd incident which results in an aircraft saying potentially clipping a wing at a gate, but usually, for the most part, it's always the older aircraft. While 189 people died in the crash, one member of a volunteer rescue team also perished during the recovery operations, bringing the whole total to 190 during the entire crash and rescue operation. We must begin though with the speculation, as that was what immediately followed the incident. The speculation began before any findings came out, before anyone actually knew the cause, before anything was more importantly confirmed. Immediately people were quick to blame the pilots, the poor safety record of Lion Air, and of course finally Boeing. I'm not going to spend a long time on this section of the video, but I'll just say at this point, making claims that, say, terrorists were involved or that the pilots took the plane down on purpose simply isn't fair nor right, especially in the early stages of the investigation. In my opinion, it shows a lack of respect to those who have just lost their lives. Moving on from that, we learnt that there was indeed a problem with the aircraft, and more widely on the 737 MAX than we originally thought. On the 7th or 8th of November, depending on your location, Boeing issued a safety bulletin on the 737 MAX aircraft. The bulletin issued a safety warning for the wrong readings on the sensors of their MAX aircraft. The AOA sensor, or otherwise known as the angle of attack sensor, and that refers to the angle at which the oncoming flow of wind hits the wings or the plane. Ignoring the bulletin sent out for the moment and back to the findings made. The 737 MAX 8, the aircraft type that was actually involved in the crash, had reported multiple issues with its airspeed indicator days before. It's noted that for 4 flights prior to the crash, pilots noted that it was malfunctioning. However, the aircraft continued to fly and likely it was just passed off as a fault. According to Bloomberg, following this bulletin, pilots of the aircraft have been informed on how to handle a potential stall that comes on from the faulty airspeed indicator and the AOA sensor. Boeing said it could cause the flight crew to have difficulty controlling the airplane and lead to excessive nose-down altitude, significant altitude loss, and possible impact with terrain. Following the crash, as expected, Boeing were put under the spotlight, with many faulting their MAX aircraft, and whether faults were in a large batch of aircraft in the 737 MAX family. The Boeing chairman and chief executive, though, has been quick to play down this, and has defended the 737 MAX. This comes as the Air Current reported that Boeing were withholding information from all airlines on the stall recovery system. The fear is that this information being withheld from airlines and pilots could potentially cause another deathly crash to occur, similar to that of Lion Air. This has been pushed to the side, with an internal memo being spread to all employees of Boeing clearing the air. That memo stated, "The relevant function of the MCAS is described in the Flight Crew Operations Manual, and we routinely engage with customers about how to operate our airplane safety." The memo also comes after earlier in the month, some pilots of an airline that operates the aircraft very openly said they were not trained by Boeing in regards to the new anti-stall feature. In case you got a bit confused with what I was discussing earlier, more simply the issue with the sensors do relate to the 737 MAX crash. This is because the new stall system helps pilots avoid these stalls. This comes about should the nose be pitched too high or lose all lift to keep the plane flying. The systems immediately detect this and push the nose of the aircraft down, correcting the problem. However, that sensor or command is relying on information from other sensors. If those said sensors have faulty readings, which was not outlined in Boeing's bulletin, but also on the Lion Air aircraft, it can result in the aircraft pitching downwards and, in turn, results in the pilots losing complete control of the aircraft. According to data found by Flight Radar, it does appear that this is what occurred. And that's not confirmed, but it is quite similar to what happened in the Lion Air incident if we're looking at the sensors. What's been the overall impact on the families? Despite the evident grief that families of the victims on board the crash are feeling, they are now suing Boeing over the design of the 737 MAX series of aircraft. Surprisingly, it isn't uncommon after a major crash like this for families to sue people like Boeing or the airline involved. Similar things did occur with the incidents involving Malaysia Airlines a few years back. Lawyers of a parent of a victim said it is particularly surprising to hear from safety experts and the heads of the pilots' unions that Boeing failed to warn its customers and the pilots of its new 737 MAX aircraft about this significant change in the flight control systems and failed to include appropriate instructions in its instruction manuals. Following all of this, the most recent news involves a conference call Boeing had planned with all airlines that do currently operate and will likely take the Boeing 737 MAX in the future. The plan was to discuss the systems of the aircraft, including those faulty sensors. This conference call is being labelled as nothing more than routine. Just the discussions Boeing will be having with its customers will be of a different nature to the usual ones. Boeing notes that they often have conference calls with their customers to discuss potential problems, get updates on their aircraft, and get a general feel how the airlines are coping. It essentially allows them to have a very open, transparent, and good relationship with their customers, which in turn can benefit them in the future if that said airline needs to order more aircraft. If they've already got that open and established relationship with Boeing, they may be more inclined to opt for them over, say, Embraer, Airbus, or any other manufacturer. Often these relationships will also aid airlines in getting discounts, something that can really benefit the airline down the line. The news of the cancellation is according to 3 sources who are familiar with the matter. First of all, it came out with just 2, and then we got our 3rd one. In addition to this, shares in Boeing actually fell after the conference call was cancelled by Boeing. The aircraft manufacturer has said though that it will now go ahead and contact airlines operating the aircraft one by one. It's worth noting that this is exactly how they did it before. The issue that remains is that Boeing is not telling airlines all they need to know. The news is being fed to some airlines, which then goes through pilot unions, and then often the message isn't actually clear when it then arrives back to pilots. While these relationships are usually very transparent, essentially what the airlines, pilots, and crew want is an open conversation. This is what this conference call was going to give them. However, now it has been cancelled, and Boeing's just going back to the way they did it before. Only in the past 24 hours, we have seen a Sunwing Boeing 737 MAX 8 involved in an incident, but thankfully it didn't end the same way as the Lion Air 737 MAX one did. Essentially, pilots of this aircraft reported that the instruments on the MAX were reading false information. As you know from viewing this entire video, this is actually the main problem, which has been outlined by Boeing on the 737 MAX aircraft. Since the crash, we haven't had any other news on incidents, but now seeing this reported, it is quite concerning to say the least. I will continue to keep you all updated on this situation should anything major emerge in the near future. It's been a very busy few weeks since the crash, and I'd once again like to give my condolences to the family and friends who lost loved ones on board the flight. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like and comment down below your thoughts on the incident. Do you believe this conference call has anything to do with it? Do you believe Boeing really need to start communicating better? Or do you believe something else? Feel free to leave it in the comment section below, but remember, try to be a little bit respectful, as 190 people in the entire investigation and incident have unfortunately passed away. I'd like to thank you very much for tuning into this video of mine, and I do very much look forward to you all joining me in the next one.